Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a really foundational idea in psychology, Gordon Allport's trait theory. We're going to see how one psychologist pretty much challenged the whole idea of personality, and how his thinking still shapes how we understand what makes each of us, well, us.
But first, let's just start with a quick question about you. Are you the exact same person when you're at work as you are with your family? Or how about when you're with your best friends versus when you're completely alone? Just think about it for a second. Is your personality this fixed, solid thing, or does it kind of shift depending on where you are and who you're with?
You know, that very question, how do you actually capture the essence of a person, is exactly what drove the psychologist Gordon Allport. He was on a mission to figure out the real building blocks of our identity, and that let him develop one of the very first major theories all about personality traits.
So what made his approach so different, so revolutionary for its time? Well, it was his focus on one single core idea. See, a lot of theories back then were trying to cram people into these neat little boxes. But Allport came along and said, nope, the real key to understanding personality is in our uniqueness. He was convinced you just can't make big generalizations when it comes to what makes us who we are. Okay, so how did Allport actually tackle this big idea of individual uniqueness? Well, he started by making a really important distinction between two different kinds of traits. On one side, you've got what he called common traits. You can think of these as the general labels we all use to kind of compare people, things like extroversion or introversion. But Allport argued that's not where the real story is. The real story, he said, is on the other side, with our personal traits. These are the characteristics that are uniquely yours, the ones shaped by your life, your experiences, and they're what really make up the true essence of your personality. But he didn't just stop there. Not at all. He took things a step further and actually organized our personal traits into a three-level hierarchy. You can almost picture it like a personality pyramid that shows just how much influence different traits have on our lives. So this pyramid, it builds from the traits that are most dependent on the situation all the way up to the ones that are the most dominant. Let's start at the foundation with secondary traits, and we'll work our way up.
Okay, so at the very bottom of this pyramid, we have secondary traits. These are your specific attitudes or preferences that really only pop up in certain contexts. Like, maybe you're a pretty calm person in general, but you get super anxious whenever you have to speak in public. That anxiety, that's a secondary trait. It doesn't define who you are all the time, but it's definitely a part of you in that one specific situation.
Moving up a level, we get to central traits. Now these are the core building blocks of you. If I were to ask your best friend to describe you, the 5 or 10 words they'd probably use, honest, kind, witty, outgoing, those are your central traits. They are way more consistent, and they really form the foundation of who you are day to day. And right at the very tip of the pyramid, we find cardinal traits. A cardinal trait is a single characteristic that is so powerful, so dominant, it basically defines a person's entire life. But here's the really important part. Allport believed these are extremely rare. Like most of us just don't have one. A perfect example of a cardinal trait in action, Mother Teresa. Her whole life was so defined by selflessness that her name basically became another word for it. That's the power of a cardinal trait. It's so all-encompassing, it literally becomes who you are known as. So as you can imagine, Allport's work was totally groundbreaking. It really shifted the focus of psychology toward the individual. But like any big foundational theory, it's also sparked a lot of debate and, some criticism over the years. I think Allport's greatest legacy is that powerful emphasis he put on individuality. By getting us to look away from broad categories and more toward a spectrum of personal traits, he directly paved the way for more modern theories like the Big Five model that's used all the time by psychologists today. His work really did set the stage for how we study personality now. But the theory isn't bulletproof. Critics have pointed out that because it focuses so much on what makes each person unique, it's really hard to use for large-scale research. It's tough to find patterns if everyone is a special case. Others have suggested that maybe it puts a little too much emphasis on traits and not quite enough on how much a situation can completely change our behavior. So after all of that, what's the big takeaway here? Why is it still so important to understand Allport's perspective on personality today? I think the answer is that Allport's theory is just this powerful reminder. You can't put people in neat little boxes. It's just not that simple. Personality is complex, it's layered, and it is deeply, deeply personal. And to really get someone, you have to look past those general labels and see the unique combination of traits that makes them who they are.
So as we wrap up, let's just turn the camera back on ourselves for a second. What are your central traits? What are those words your friends would use to describe you? And what about those secondary traits that only come out to play in certain situations? Ultimately, how does that whole unique mix of traits shape the person you are today?